You stack 5 accounts onto one cloud phone to save a bit of money, and for a month everything looks fine. They log in, they post, they reply, nobody complains. Then one morning, a single one of them trips a filter for something small, and within a day the other 4 are frozen too. Accounts that never did anything wrong. Nothing was broken in how you ran them. The problem was that to the platform, those 5 were never really separate accounts at all. They were one device wearing 5 hats, and the moment one hat looked bad, the whole head went down with it. For context, I run more than 100 real cloud Android phones in Singapore. Genuine Samsung handsets on real carrier SIMs, each with its own persistent Singapore mobile IP, its own ADB endpoint, and the live view you open in the browser. The single question I get asked more than any other is how many accounts you can run on one phone. And the honest answer is not a tidy number. It is a way of thinking about risk, so I am going to give you that instead of a comfortable lie, because the number people want is exactly the thing that gets their accounts killed. Here is the verdict before the detail. For anything you cannot afford to lose, the safe ratio is 1 account per phone, 1 identity per device. You can physically run several accounts on a single handset, and for low-stakes work that is genuinely fine. But every extra account you stack shares 1 device, 1 fingerprint, and 1 IP, so they rise and fall together as a group. The real decision was never how many accounts fit on a phone. It is how much you would lose if all of them fell at the same time. So start with what actually ties 2 accounts together in a platform's eyes, because it is not your name written on them. It is the device they live on, the email and the build of the handset, the Android ID, the IP and the essence sitting behind it, the login sessions, the payment methods, and the rhythm of how they behave. When 2 accounts share enough of those signals, the platform quietly stops seeing 2 separate people and starts seeing 1 operator running a set. That linkage is the entire game, and stacking accounts on one phone hands the platform every signal it needs to draw the connection. Which means the number that matters is not accounts per phone, it is blast radius. If you put 6 accounts on one device and just one of them gets flagged for something, the platform has every reason in the world to look at the other 5 sitting on the same hardware, the same IP, the same everything, and take a closer look at all of them. A single bad account can drag the whole phone down with it. 1 account per phone shrinks that blast radius to exactly 1, and shrinking the blast radius is the whole reason you would ever pay for real separation in the first place. How far you can safely push the ratio depends entirely on the platform. The strict ones, WeChat, WhatsApp, the banking apps, are 1 number, 1 account, 1 device, full stop, and trying to stack them is just asking for a freeze. The middle ones, Instagram and TikTok, will let you hold a small number if you are careful, but every extra account you add raises the odds against you. And the loose ones, a utility app, a game, some marketplaces, tolerate more because there is simply less for a bad actor to gain. Know which tier your app sits in before you decide anything at all. A lot of people reach for the shortcut the apps themselves hand you, the add account button inside the app, or a dual app or work profile feature that clones it on the same phone. You need to understand what that actually does. It does not give you 2 separate identities. It welds them together on one device on purpose, so the platform knows for certain they belong to the same person. That is completely fine when it is your genuine personal and business split, and it is a quiet disaster when you needed those 2 accounts to look unrelated to each other. The tool is doing the exact opposite of separations. The same goes for the cloning and multi-space apps that promise 10 copies of one app on a single phone. Beyond linking every account together, a lot of them are a tell in their own right, because a normal human being does not run 11 copies of one app side by side, and platforms have learned to spot the frameworks that do it. You set out to look like many ordinary users and you ended up looking like one very suspicious one instead. Real separation is boring by comparison. 1 real app, 1 real account, 1 real phone, and nothing clever bolted on top. So here is how I actually sort it in practice. List your accounts by what you would lose if they vanished tomorrow morning. The money-making ones, the client-owned ones, the aged accounts you could never rebuild, the ones tied to a real payment history, those each get their own phone, no argument. The throwaway ones, a burner you would shrug off, can share a device if you truly do not care about the blast radius. Price the account first, then decide the ratio. An account that earns more in a month than a dedicated phone costs to run is not one you cluster to save a few dollars. Let me put the economics plainly, because this is really a money decision dressed up as a technical one. Stacking accounts on one phone saves you hardware cost today and hands you correlation risk tomorrow. Isolating them costs a little more each month and buys you a blast radius of 1. The sum is genuinely simple. If losing an account would cost you more than a phone cost to run, isolate it, and if it would not, then do not bother. Most people stack far too aggressively because the saving is visible today and the loss only ever shows up later, on the bad day. Notice that the real way to scale is sideways, not by piling more accounts onto one device. A single operator can comfortably run many phones from a browser, so 100 accounts is 100 phones, not 10 phones each carrying 10 accounts. The fleet grows by adding hardware, and every new account lands on clean ground of its own, instead of crowding onto ground another account already sits on. That is how an agency runs real volume, without every account quietly becoming a hostage to the behavior of the others around it. The network side follows exactly the same logic. If 6 accounts share one device, they also share one IP, and a platform that sees 6 identities behind a single address draws the obvious conclusion. On my farm, each phone carries its own persistent Singapore mobile IP on a real carrier SIM, so one account per phone also means one IP per identity. The device story and the network story finally agree with each other. A single real resident phone in Singapore with a single account on it, which is precisely what an ordinary user is supposed to look like. Persistence matters more here than people expect too. Every time you log an account out and back in from a fresh device or a new IP, that itself is a signal, and people who stack accounts end up juggling logins constantly, because one phone cannot hold that many live sessions cleanly. On a cloud phone, the account simply stays signed in on its own handset, day after day, on the same SIM and the same IP. It is not relogging, it is not roaming between devices, it is just living somewhere stable. And stability is about the least suspicious thing an account can ever do. There is one more thing the ratio cannot fix on its own, and that is behavior. Even at the perfect 1-to-1, if you drive every phone with the same script at the same second, post the same caption, and add strangers at the same inhuman pace, you have handed the platform a different kind of sameness to catch. Separating the hardware buys you independence between accounts, but you still have to let each one behave like its own person on its own schedule. The device removes the easy tell for you. It is on you not to go and add a fresh one on top of it. Let me be plain about what a real phone will not do for you. It will not make stacking many accounts on one device safe, because that linkage is built into sharing hardware. It is not a flaw I can patch away. It will not save an account that earned its ban by behaving badly. And it will not pick the ratio for you, because only you know what each account is really worth and how much loss you can stomach. What it gives you is the ability to actually choose one account per phone when the account deserves it, cleanly, and to do it across a whole fleet at once. The reason people stack in the first place is that keeping real phones is a grind, so one device holding many accounts feels efficient right up until the bad day. But a shelf of real handsets is its own full-time job. Every account wants its own SIM that costs money every month. Every phone needs charging without cooking its battery, needs its updates, and needs to stay reachable over AdBeep from wherever you happen to work. Do all of that across dozens of devices, and you have quietly hired a role that has nothing to do with the business those accounts were supposed to serve. That is the whole reason cloudf.one exists. Real Samsung handsets in Singapore on dedicated hardware, each with its own persistent Singapore mobile IP on a real carrier SIM, Singtel, StarHub, M1, or Vivify, across prepaid and postpaid lines. Not an emulator, not a data center address, not a laptop wearing a Singapore label, a genuine phone that the platform has no reason to doubt because it is a genuine phone. You watch each one live in the browser, reach it over its own ADB endpoint, and list or lock any device through the API, so one account per phone works at real scale without anyone ever sharing hardware. Start at cloud.one and use code YT30 on your first month. So to recap, the question is never how many accounts fit on one phone. It is how big a blast radius you can afford to accept. What links accounts is shared hardware, a shared IP, and shared behavior, and stacking them on one device links all three at once. The in-app second account and the cloning apps do not separate your accounts. They weld them together. Sort your accounts by what you would lose. Give the valuable ones their own phone and their own IP. Scale sideways by adding hardware, and let each account behave like its own person. Run the accounts you can afford to lose however you like, but give anything that actually matters its own real phone. And let the boring one-to-one setup quietly keep the rest of your accounts out of the blast radius. I'll see you in the next one.